The algorithm has spent this entire season threatening to kill everyone in Silo 18, yet every time the situation gets close to the point where that threat should matter, it reaches for something else. Lucas Kyle was warned that sharing what he saw in the tunnel could trigger the safeguard, and Camille was told that contact between two silos could set it off immediately. The rule is presented as absolute, with a punishment so severe that nobody should ever risk testing it. Juliet has already tested it harder than anyone. She left Silo 18, crossed the surface into Silo 17, found Jimmy living in isolation there, learned what happened during the rebellion, spent several days there, and then came home. Once she returned, the information she brought with her started spreading. People in Mechanical learned what she found. The outsiders learned that other silos exist, and suddenly the exact knowledge the system spent generations containing was moving through Silo 18. After all of that, the safeguard never came. And now we know something about the algorithm that makes that much more interesting. It can lie when it decides the lie is necessary. Once you know that, you have to be much more careful about taking anything it says at face value, especially when the information it gives people is what keeps them obedient. Which brings us to Bernard. What if the algorithm lied to him about how many populated silos are actually left? Silo has already played this kind of trick with the outside world. The cafeteria display looked real. Then the green image in the helmet made that display seem like a lie, until Juliet learned the dead world outside was exactly what the cafeteria had been showing all along. What fooled people was the cleaner's helmet. The same kind of misdirection could be happening with the silo count. Bernard is told that only a small number of silos have gone dark, and that gives him a very specific picture of his place in the system. Silo 18 is one part of a much larger project. If he loses control badly enough, his population can be sacrificed and the rest of the project carries on. As long as Bernard believes that, he has every reason to see his own silo as expendable. The algorithm benefits from him thinking that way, because the moment Bernard learns Silo 18 is one of the last populated silos, possibly even the last one still functioning, his relationship with the system changes. He would start asking whether every order really had to be obeyed, because he would know the algorithm needs his population alive. A threat to kill 10,000 people also becomes much harder to believe when those 10,000 may represent a huge part of the population the algorithm was built to preserve. That is why the lie matters so much. Bernard needs to keep seeing his silo as disposable. The same assumption keeps Camille afraid of losing control, while Juliet continues making decisions around the idea that one wrong move can still get everyone killed. As long as that belief holds, the safeguard can control all of them without ever being used. Its original purpose makes sense in a network of 50 functioning silos. If one population learns enough to become impossible to control, the system wipes out that silo before the damage reaches everyone else. 10,000 people die and the larger population survives. That is the kind of calculation the Silo project was built to make. The calculation changes every time another population disappears. Losing a working silo means losing people who know how to keep the place alive, along with another population capable of carrying the project into the next generation. After hundreds of years underground, the system cannot simply replace that somewhere else. Eventually, the safeguard starts working against the reason it exists, because a weapon designed to protect humanity becomes dangerous to the project once there are too few populations left to sacrifice. And we already know the wider network has taken serious damage. The algorithm has confirmed that 6 silos went through full memory resets. 6 separate populations had their memories erased as the system attempted to restore control. Then, there is Silo 17, where Juliet found the aftermath of a complete collapse. Jimmy had spent most of those decades living in isolation in a silo where almost the entire population was gone, with the lower levels flooded. So we already know the network has suffered major failures. Bernard still has to take the algorithm's word for how much of it is left, and that is exactly the number the algorithm has a reason to keep high in his mind. If the true number of populated silos is much lower than he has been told, admitting it would also admit that Silo 18 has become far more valuable. Bernard would know the system has fewer replacements, and every threat against his population would start sounding less absolute. The easiest way to keep Bernard feeling expendable is to make him believe there are plenty of people left without him. That makes Juliet's situation much stranger. She has already crossed the exact boundary everyone is warned about. Juliet traveled from Silo 18 to Silo 17, lived there with Jimmy, came back, and the information she brought with her started spreading. If silo-to-silo contact really carries zero tolerance, she has already given the system the clearest possible reason to act. Instead, when Juliet asks to return to Silo 17, the algorithm negotiates with her. She offers to go back on the memory drugs once the trip is over, and the algorithm hears her out. The possibility of drugging the children comes up as part of the same conversation. Juliet even offers to remain behind while two other people travel in her place, and the discussion keeps going until the algorithm reaches terms it can accept. For a rule presented as automatic, that is, a lot of flexibility, it matters even more because of who Juliet is by this point. She has direct knowledge of Silo 17 and the rebellion that destroyed it, and she also knows about the safeguard pipe and that it can be capped. People inside Silo 18 trust her enough that Camille is already struggling to contain what happens around her. If Silo 18 were truly disposable, keeping Juliet cooperative would carry much less value. The algorithm could refuse the trip and rely on the punishment everyone already fears if the situation became impossible to control. What we actually see is an intelligence spending time finding a version of Juliet's plan that lets the population remain manageable. The same thing happens when Silo 18 starts moving closer to open rebellion. By then, Camille is already losing control, largely because people trust Juliet and forbidden information is moving faster than Judicial can contain it. This is exactly the kind of situation the safeguard is supposed to exist for, yet the algorithm reaches for vitamin D+. A full memory reset keeps everyone alive, which also makes it far more complicated. The silo still has to function the next morning, with the generator and food supply kept running while Judicial tries to restore order after thousands of memories have been altered. Killing the population would end the rebellion immediately. The algorithm has already pushed them toward the version where it still has 10,000 people to manage afterwards. Even if this theory turns out to be wrong, there is a reasonable explanation for that choice. 10,000 workers are valuable in any version of the Silo project, so vitamin D+ could simply be the preferred response while the safeguard remains available as a final measure. That explanation works on its own until you put it next to everything else the algorithm is doing. It has become much more heavy-handed with Camille because it needs her to keep Silo 18 under control. She can still give orders through Judicial and deal with people directly, which lets the algorithm hide how much authority is actually coming from somewhere else. As the situation gets worse, it pushes her harder and then has to keep her functioning when that pressure starts wearing her down. And that matters if the network is running out of people. A system with plenty of healthy silos can afford to lose one after every softer method fails. A system running out of populations has to keep working on the one in front of it. That is what the algorithm keeps doing with Silo 18. It bargains with Juliet because her cooperation matters, and when Judicial starts losing control, it leans harder on Camille. Vitamin D+ follows the same priority because the population survives the reset, while the safeguard stays in the background as the threat everyone is supposed to fear. That threat only works while nobody knows how valuable Silo 18 really is. Bernard believes only a few silos have gone dark, so he has no reason to think his population has become irreplaceable. That same assumption shapes Juliet's plan around the safeguard pipe and keeps Camille operating under the threat of total failure. They are all making decisions inside a version of the world the algorithm controls. If that version is a lie, the power balance changes immediately. Walker's radio matters for the same reason, although right now it still cannot tell us how healthy the wider network is. Bernard explains that each silo runs on compartmentalized radio channels and that Silo 1 monitors those frequencies. Walker could not hear the others before because her equipment was configured for the wrong channels. Then Bernard shows her how to change that. For the first time, Walker has a way to hear evidence of the other silos directly, instead of relying on what the system says about them. So far, we still have not heard enough chatter to establish how many populations are alive, which leaves Bernard taking the algorithm's word for the health of the network. Silo 17 gives us something much firmer, because Jimmy's parents physically capped the safeguard pipe during the uprising. The mechanism can be defeated once people find where it enters the silo, and Juliet now knows that. Her current plan is built around finding the same pipe inside Silo 18, so the algorithm is dealing with someone who understands both the threat and the way to remove it. If Silo 18 is one of the last populations left, the algorithm is caught in a very narrow position. Using the safeguard destroys people it may desperately need, while waiting gives Juliet time to remove the safeguard as an option by capping the pipe. The threat becomes most useful before anyone forces the algorithm to prove how far it is actually willing to go. And all of this comes back to the lie Bernard was told, because that lie is what keeps the safeguard believable. It does more than keep Bernard obedient. It preserves the assumption that Silo 18 can still be sacrificed, and that same assumption is shaping the way Camille and Juliet behave. As long as they believe the system has other populations to fall back on, the algorithm keeps control without spending the one thing it may no longer be able to afford. The safeguard can be completely real and still function as a bluff, because the deception sits in the algorithm's willingness to use it. A working pipe means very little if firing it would destroy a population the system can no longer afford to lose. That would explain Juliet's apparently impossible trip to Silo 17 and back, because the algorithm lets the breach stand. It also explains why a memory reset becomes preferable when rebellion grows. Camille's harsher treatment fits the same need to regain control while keeping the population alive. Every one of those choices preserves Silo 18. If the algorithm lied to Bernard because only a few populated silos remain, possibly just Silo 18 itself, then preserving this population may have become more important than preserving the secret that was supposed to protect it. Bernard still believes his silo can be sacrificed, and that belief also shapes Camille's obedience and Juliet's fear of pushing too far. That version of the world has to survive for the algorithm to keep control. Once Silo 18 understands how badly the system needs them alive, the safeguard loses the certainty that makes the threat work. The pipe can still kill them, but using it may have become the very catastrophe the algorithm was built to prevent. At that point, the safeguard is an empty threat in practice, because the system cannot pull the trigger without helping destroy the thing it was created to save.